Hi, it's Papa. It's high summer here at the cottage, and we have kind of coolish mornings, and it gets pretty hot in the afternoon. But I love summer. I love actually fall, winter, and spring also. It's good to be out in nature as much as possible. It brings you closer to what I think is reality. But here's what it looks like at the cottage right now. We're getting ready to go to Florida to see our grandkids, and Grammy's getting ready for that. We've had a lot of flowers in the flower bed. It's truly wonderful to live in a place like this. It brings peace and contentment. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I want to talk about geology and what's called the Wilson cycle. We've seen in some of the videos the concept of subduction, where ocean crust breaks and goes down underneath other ocean crust or a continent and creates these stratovolcanoes and volcanic island chains. The Aleutian Islands in Alaska are a super good example. They're volcanic islands. Also, the islands of Japan are also volcanic islands with Mount Fuji and all that stuff. And then we've talked also about rifting, where you have a supercontinent that lays on top of the molten mantle, and it's like putting a lid on a pot that's on the stove, and it boils over, and that splits the supercontinent into smaller continents and causes rifting. And the rifting process, when it keeps on going, causes subduction on the other side of the continent or the other side of the ocean or wherever, and the rifting process actually creates an ocean and makes it bigger. That's a Wilson cycle, where you start off with a supercontinent. It's broken up into smaller continents, and oceans are created by rifting in between all the continent pieces. And then that process reverses. The continents all come back together and crash into each other, forming another supercontinent. That's what has happened since the beginning of time here on planet Earth, because of these mantle hot spots. Somewhere in the mantle, it's going to be hotter than some other place in the mantle, and wherever that hot spot is, that's where rifting is going to occur, and basalt lava is going to be produced. And just think of the whole world back in the beginning, when there was only ocean crust. Well, a hot spot occurred someplace, and the ocean, a rifting event occurred, a hot spot in the rifting occurred, and that rifting made new ocean crust. Well, the Earth was already covered with ocean crust, and if new ocean crust is being made, that's too much ocean crust. It's like trying to fit the skin of an apple around a grape. Something's got to give, and that what gave was the ocean crust broke somewhere, and a piece of ocean crust subducted under another piece of ocean crust and created a long volcanic island chain, just like the Aleutians or the islands of Japan. That might have happened 2 or 3 places on the Earth. So you've got these 3 volcanic island chains. Maybe they're close together, maybe they're not. But this rifting process continues somewhere else. And slowly but surely, more island chains are produced, and those island chains eventually get smashed into each other. The subduction process occurs, and they get smashed into each other to produce a microcontinent, a small continent. Maybe you had 2 or 3 microcontinents produced in the young Earth, and then rifting and subduction and Wilson cycles kept going, and these microcontinents smashed into each other to make regular normal-sized continents. And that might have gone on for millions of years until finally these regular-sized continents smashed together to make a supercontinent. So you can see that this process of the Earth evolving, the Earth's crust evolving, these tectonic plates evolving, starts off with ocean, goes through the island arc phase, into the microcontinent phase, and finally into the regular continent, and finally into the supercontinent phase. And then you get into the the phase where the supercontinent is breaking up, splitting apart, and then coming back together to create another supercontinent. Well, geologists say we've had about, well, the most recent supercontinent, which came together about 300 million years ago, was called Pangaea. The continent, the supercontinent before that, which we're going to talk a lot about, was supercontinent Rodinia. There have been at least 2 other supercontinents, maybe 3, going back into the deep past, and they have names for them. I don't know much about them, but the main object of this video is to tell you that process. And if you hear the word Wilson cycle just means you start with a supercontinent, rifting occurs, it breaks up, oceans come, and the supercontinent split into regular sized continents. Then later on, those come back together and produce another supercontinent. That's one Wilson cycle. Now, who was Wilson? Wilson, of course, was a soccer ball. Okay, pop out.